Hey everybody, welcome to the Forest School Podcast. This podcast is all about exploring the fascinating world of forest school education and sharing our evolving perspectives on this ever-changing field. We want to take a moment at the beginning of this episode to thank you, our dedicated listeners, for joining us. But before we dive into this episode, we'd like to address something important. If you're just joining us, or if you've been with us since the beginning, you may have noticed that some of our earlier episodes sound a bit different. The Forest School Podcast began as our own personal journey through the world of education, and those early episodes reflect a time when we were still learning the ropes. While we're proud of our growth and progress through the years, it's essential to acknowledge that those early episodes may not meet the technical and content quality standards of our more recent episodes. Education is a field that's constantly evolving, and so are our views and insights. Our early episodes served as a public diary of our learning journey, complete with all the mistakes and learning experiences that came with it. We believe that it's essential to keep these episodes available for posterity as they remind us how far we've come. However, if you're here for the most up-to-date discussions on education and our best quality recordings, we'd encourage you to explore our more recent episodes. Our views have evolved, our production quality's improved, and we're excited to share our current perspectives and knowledge with you. So, whether you're here to trace our journey from the beginning, or you're seeking the latest insights into education, we're thrilled to have you along for the ride. Thank you very much for being part of the Forest School community. Let's embark on this journey together. Right.
Hello.
Oh, we're going to be on the wrong sides because I've put it on the wrong side of the other side of the table. Normally it's that end.
Ah.
So we might be in the wrong ears.
Right.
Hello guys.
Hi.
We're back. It's been an incredibly long break. Longer than we intended it to be. We did record a podcast last week, and it sounded like a badly tuned radio, like it was just horrible static through the whole thing, which I think means the microphone wasn't plugged in properly. But we're gonna have another go, which hopefully means we'll be no less coherent about what we were talking about. So we wanted to talk about rhythm, routine, and structure. I think rhythm and routine and structure are an interesting thing at Forest School because they're quite often the first thing people... if you've gone to a Forest School session, it's normally the first thing people pick up on. It's like, oh, it's not as structured as school, or it's not as structured as a normal, in air quotes, normal toddler session. It's not as structured as whatever. And I think there's a difference. We were talking about the difference between structure and rhythm, and there is definitely a rhythm to our sessions, but that it's quite like rhythm I feel like is more fluid as a term. It kind of implies that like it lasts as long as it lasts, whereas structure sounds like it's imposed. Yep. Maybe that's what I think the difference is. Yeah, definitely, and that we have the freedom, I guess, to read a session each time. Each group is different, and you might do the same activity even with the same group of children but on a different day, and in another environment or in a different type of setting you might go, oh, we've got 20 minutes for this and that's what we're going to spend on it, whereas we have the flexibility to be able to go, do you know what, this just isn't working, or it's taken 5 seconds, and that's absolutely fine, and now let's look at what the children are doing, which can lead us to our next sort of activity or thing that we're going to do, our next play type or whatever, which is great that we have the freedom to be able to do that. And the other way around, you might have brought your sort of bag of ideas which you've written on the blackboard and go, okay, we're going to, I think we might do this today, but because a child has... Well, they arrive, it's that thing of meeting them where they are, isn't it? Completely. And not going... Especially, I think it's very different. If you had a group of children that you were meeting every day, I think we've said this before about planning, is I think you can more consistently be like, you were like this at 3 o'clock on Monday. I've got a reasonable idea that you might remember that idea and still be interested in it Tuesday morning. Yeah. But because a lot of almost all of our groups are weekly.
But do you know what? I was actually thinking about that, and I wonder whether that's true. Even if we saw the same group of children every day here in the woods, I think it might be more different because the woods is such a changing environment. because you're
True.
outdoors, and because the the weather, the amount of light, the amount of wind, things that not just seasonal change, but like moment to moment change, day by day change, about climate, about the fact that the environment is constantly stimulating. They found a beetle today. That beetle wasn't there yesterday, or there's a bird that's come closer, and so all of those things completely influence, especially I think with little children who do notice those things and are very almost elemental more than adults, because they don't have that whole like whirling, I'm thinking about the fact that my dishwasher's broken or whatever. They're in the moment, aren't they? So even if they were at that place at 3 o'clock yesterday and you knew you were going to see those same children in the same place, I just think you can't know. I
read a really interesting thing in the Coyote Guide book, and they were talking about the different perspective on things, and the example the sort of metaphor they used was like a man that taken his little boy for a hike, and he said they'd gone up to this hike, and he said he was looking at the top of this enormous view, which in the scheme of things is relatively unchanging. You could go up almost every day and that view is unchanging, but his toddler was at the same place with the view, but his toddler was looking at a worm on the ground. And that will change all the time. And I wonder if that's that. If you extrapolated that out as adults, we're looking at the big unchanging picture, because we go, Christmas is coming and always next year. We're looking at things in such a big frame, macro, and that we almost rely on a structure to run things on autopilot. Whereas because children can look at the minutiae and it's almost mindfulness, isn't there? More present in what is actually happening, as opposed to an adult that is going, right, I know this, we just put the breakfast on the table, then we go by 8:10. Whereas a kid is going, the Rice Krispies have gone softer this morning, and all that stuff.
But also makes it more, if you're talking about kind of structure of a session, also makes it sometimes potentially more difficult if you've decided that at this time we're all going to cook, but some children are completely immersed in that minute world, and they've got like that diagram that was doing the rounds on the internet for a bit.
The tendrils,
and so an adult comes along and goes, come on now, you love cooking, we're cooking now, come on, leave that now, we're cooking, wash hands, let's go, and you do it with the best of intentions, or an adult will do it with the best of intentions, because they do know that the kid loves cooking, they've shown that they love cooking beforehand, and they know that at the end they'll enjoy eating the food and it'll be a great experience all round. But the process of ripping those tendrils of thought and engagement and involvement out can be almost painful for the child. So that's a very delicate balance to strike, isn't it? And something I think we work hard to explain to parents who are here, because the parents do want to get like the best out of the session. They want to take part in all the activities that are on offer. But sometimes
it's a bit of FOMO, isn't it? Fear of missing out, of just kind of, we've got to do that because then they might not do, I don't know, this type of cooking again. And actually it's kind of like, well, we might if this is what you're into, and then
it's about appreciating the benefit for the child of what they're doing as well, because to you it might not look like very much, but to them it might be a massive moment for them. It's important, and they've chosen it, and who are we really to come tramping all over that and go, but this is the structure, this is the timetable, we're doing this.
Do you think there's ever a sliding? So I don't think anyone would disagree that for some children with additional needs, structure and kind of routines can be very important, and they to feel comfortable and access forest school in the best way, they do need some routines, or they feel more comfortable with routines. Do you think I wonder if there's something that's like for all children, so I say we have some children that come and start at toddler groups, and I go, or even the Saturday morning groups, I'm like, actually you need quite a lot of, not structure, but you need quite a lot of input at the moment. You need me to go, should we try in this game? Do you want to go over here? Have you seen this? They need more of that adult input, which can feel like structure. And then you almost need that. It's almost like an extended tour, so that you're almost going, did you know this was here? Did you know this was here? Did you know this was happening? So that next week you go, do you remember all those things are still here? Is there anything you want to... Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely,
You're almost reducing the amount of... I was going to say structure, but it's not structure, is it? It's input.
Yeah.
And whether you... And actually, I think what's interesting is where we as practitioners, as children get older, I think they become more if they practiced at it, they become more aware at telling you when their rhythm has come to an end and they've finished an activity. With younger children, I think you have to read it and go, you might not think that you're, it's like, I can see you're coming to the end of this, and I need to have something, well, not I need to, I wonder if you would need something else coming in almost underneath that to overlap and... Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's quite interesting.
We were talking the other day, weren't we, about the play cycle and about sort of letting it run its course and being in that state of negative capability so that you are completely receptive without your own agenda, without bringing your own... Do you want to explain
negative capability as your new thing?
So, negative capability is a phrase coined by the poet John Keats, and he explained it as the state in which you can where true poetry and creativity can happen, because you are completely open and in the moment, and you haven't got any preconceptions about what you want from a situation or from a thought. You are completely open. And so play workers often use this as well to describe a state that the ideal adult will be in when playing with a child, so that instead of going, oh, I can see you're writing on the ground with a stick, let's try and do some letters with this and whatnot. So you might have an impulse to, they call it adulterate the play with your own agenda. You've got your own kind of like goal for that child, or you start adding in things for the best of intentions, but actually if you just wait and see and let the child lead, then the play cycle can naturally come to its own end and fruition, and you're describing move on to the next thing. So you're watchful for the play cues, and you're there to support and to join in when the child gives you those play cues, but to try not to adulterate the situation, that's really hard.
And it's kind of interesting because I think my experience of teaching was that you're encouraged to do that. You're encouraged to constantly kind of step in, and in the teaching world they refer to it as like extending or pushing them on and doing whatever. But actually, if I was thinking about the very basic lesson plan of like starter, main, and then they used to call it a plenary where you wrap everything up. And actually, thinking back at it, letting a play cycle come to an end is where the child is naturally going, I'm going to wrap this up now in my head. I've finished all of this up. And it's weirdly then, if you think about it, artificial to go, all 30 of you must now intellectually be at a point where I can condense all this information. Because someone there might have like just started to get our grips with the concept. But because someone over here, or because 5 people over here have come to the end of their cycle, and you're reading the room and you're going, I'm really sorry, I'm going to pull you early and I'm pulling you late, and it doesn't fit. But then I think, should we kind of talk about some of the routines that we do have in our sessions? So we have, what do? We start with a circle, which I think is pretty typical of any forest school, to at least try and sit round in a circle. And I learnt it as a thrive technique because it equalises everybody in the circle. You can all see each other, but also it's like, this is your time to speak. And actually it's quite interesting, I think, when you get children who, once they get comfortable with that routine and know that they're going to get, everybody's going to be on you, and you might be going around the circle, and we do arbitrary things like, what's your favourite cake, or like, who did you want to be when you grow up, kind of thing. We'll get round, and you get to a kid, but they know that that's their time if they want to make something, and they'll just go off on one and go, actually, I really like slugs. And do you know what? This morning, my cat was licking my face, and it's just that feeling of they know that routine enough to know, like, this is my time. I can talk to everybody, and they will listen. And But
also, if they don't want to, they don't have to, and that's fine. There's no pressure. But because that is a routine, we always do it. Then you see the progress of some children who aren't able to speak. Who aren't able to sit with the circle for a really long time. And then they decide that they're going to speak, and they know, and so all the time that's at the back of their brain going, well, I know it's going to be next week, so it doesn't really matter if I don't speak now, because I know it's going to happen next time, and I know it's going to happen next time, and maybe I'll feel ready. Oh, I do feel ready, and I'm going to share. And that moment of actually a child has spoken to the group for the first time is really special. But that wouldn't be there if we didn't always do it. And I always used to think that in school about assemblies as well. Like, obviously, if you're working in school, sometimes assemblies are not the greatest experience. Sometimes they can be a really powerful force. And I think within a school which does do assemblies well, if to do that, without fail, like, We always all meet together on a Tuesday, no matter what. And if there are exams happening, we still meet, but in a different place. Instead of going, oh, assembly's cancelled again, cancelled again.
Oh, we're going to do it in the morning today.
Yeah, you know, and that it gives it value and meaning. And you know, some things only work if you stick to them, and that is a routine. I think that is important. Sorry, I meant to say that noise wasn't me doing a wee. It was actually me pouring some coffee. You probably heard a little sloshy noise there, just in case.
Do you think people thought we were recording this while we were in the toilet?
Yeah, or some other kind of strange liquid pouring noise. I'm just aware that might be in people's ears and sound quite weird. So. Yeah, and then we have the blackboard, don't we? So we have some activities written up there, and sometimes we don't get to them all, you know, because play has happened and taken us off in a different direction, so we don't get to Firelighting with Birch Bark, which was one of our activities this week.
I think that's one of the differences between having a lesson plan, like, because I always sort of think of the blackboard as our plan, but it being a blackboard as opposed to a piece of paper means it's very low effort to completely scrub something out and write something else in its place, as opposed to a piece of paper where you've got to cross and jimmy stuff in, or like, you know, lesson plans when you're a teacher and you go, I've seen some teachers plan down to like, this will take 3 minutes, this will take 5, and if you have to adjust it, and then they just lose it completely.
Palimpsest.
What's that?
A palimpsest is a tablet or somewhere where you write, which you can easily rub away, but it's always got the trace of what was written before. So like a wax tablet.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the blackboard is a palimpsest. So you can see the traces of ideas that have happened, because we never really properly clean it. It's always just kind of there, and the kids are able to work. That's the nice thing about it as well. It isn't like...
It's at child height. It's accessible.
It's not like interactive whiteboard, teacher domain only. Occasionally you might get invited to write on it if you're really special, but... it's there, and we say regularly, don't we? Like, the chalk's there. If you want to do that, write it on the board so we don't forget.
Or draw
we can do it later.
That's the big thing, isn't it? Making it accessible. Do you want to just draw a thing? Do you want to just like make a mark that will remind us
that you want to do that later? Especially if like a kid wants to do something with tools, and you go, oh, we can't do that right now because we've got these tools out, but to show
put it on the board,
this has value.
I am committed to it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
All those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a really interesting rhythm to the day. So we have. Our kindergarten runs all day. I mean all day, 9-3. Yeah. And the home ed groups run 9-3. And it's interesting, I think, to see a whole day's worth of rhythms over... Because I think we talked last time we tried to record the podcast, didn't we, about almost concentric circles. So you have a play cycle might be the inner circle of however long that takes. And that a bit like I'm thinking of... like you might draw the planets.
Yeah.
You know, going around. And the small one would be that play cycle, and then the bigger one might be like a morning, and then a morning, afternoon, that kind of cycle, and then the bigger one would be a whole day, and then like we've said, because the environment's always changing, you get that circle of like, well, a week goes past, and then you go, well, a season goes, you know, because I think seasonally it's quite interesting because you start to notice change, and then you a bit like so with leaves turning, you notice the first bit of it. And then you don't notice the rest of them going because they're not interesting, because they're not novel. Well, I mean, you do notice it, but it's not as... Yeah. We don't point it out to each other. Yeah. So we have this middle bit of a season where we perhaps aren't as aware as we could be. Yeah. And then towards the end of the season, you start to notice the next one coming in. You know, it might be... So if it's winter, it might be like, oh, there was a bit of frost this morning. And you start to notice those little bits. And that's actually quite an interesting circle because it doesn't... Whereas we're saying a play cycle, you let it completely come to an end. The seasons don't completely come to an end. They go, oh, it's very wintry today, and then the next week is Britain, so it's a heat wave, and you know, and then the following week it's 4 foot of snow, and
I'm really interested in the way that the seasons affect our rhythms, and therefore the rhythm of a session and the feeling
like we
of
said
a
about
group.
Stories.
Yeah, so I read somewhere that
Did Robin come and sit with us?
Wants to join in. I read somewhere that in summer we are generally less able to focus. So we've got kind of energy, but it's all sort of diffuse and scatterbrained, and we might feel kind of relaxed, but also we're a bit flighty and not really.
They're hazy.
Yeah, hazy, not really able to kind of sit down and read, and all of our energy is outwards. So you're kind of like noticing, absorbing a lot of external stimulus. Whereas in the winter, your sort of circle of concentration gets like a bit smaller and more introvert, and you're more able to sit and read or craft or give your energy and focus to one thing a bit longer. And I definitely think that's definitely true for me, and I think that does have a big effect on the way our groups work. So I do notice that in summer, if we're talking about our planning or reflecting on a session, I think summer groups often need a lot less input from us. I don't know if you feel the same, but and it might also be because they've been there, the children have been there for, generally we have a lot of children that have been there for almost a year by that point, so that could also be that.
I would agree. I think in the summer you almost need a bigger bag of smaller ideas. You need to that thing that you build up over years of doing it, where you go, I know where we can go with this, and I know where we can go with that. Whereas in the winter you can much more go, should we carve some spoons? And people are more in a rhythm to sit and stay for a while. And in summer, I think they need less to get going on an idea, but they possibly need, like you're saying, where you're hazy and you drift from idea to idea.
Yeah,
it's quite interesting, actually. We were saying, storytelling is something that in the summer doesn't really...
It doesn't work. Well, it's so weird, isn't it?
It's an interesting thing, because I think when we, mid-session, go to, we get to sort of 2/3 of the way through, and you and I will find each other wherever we are and go, story, or singing, or how are we finishing? And I think storytelling is as much about how we feel.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Because we're sort of feeding off the vibe of the group.
Yeah.
So quite often in the summer we just go, no, I'm not feeling a story. No. He's doing that, and she's going to be over there, and it's not going to work. Whereas in the winter, it's quite it seems to just be like, do you want to tell a story? Yeah, I do kind of want to get everybody back round and be a bit communal again.
But it's almost like people sort of gather preemptively, even if you haven't said there's going to be a story. There seems to be a natural moment in the winter sessions where you look around and everyone is sort of sat down around the fire, all having a snack or a drink at the same time, which doesn't happen so much in the summer. It's a lot more, you have half the group up the hill and half the group down the hill and that kind of thing. So I think it's naturally, the rhythm of the group naturally facilitates storytelling better in the winter.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Well, I think that's a rhythm. That's a rhythm ending. I don't know how long that was.
The play cycle has ended.
Our talk cycle has ended. Fantastic. Right. Cool. Thank you very much, guys. If you want to, we are running our next Adult Learning CPD Day is November 3rd, I think, off the top of my head, which we're focusing the whole day on play working. And invitations to play and the different play types and how you can facilitate those. So that would be brilliant. If you want to drop us a message on Facebook with any questions, or our email, which is childrenoftheforest@outlook.com. If not, we will see you hopefully next week on the podcast.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Bye.